Hey, in today's video, we're going to talk about the top 3 ETFs that we should consider investing into. I'm going to list out the pros and cons of each and which one of the 3 I believe is the top. Before we go into today's video, I know you like to see the portfolio update. So we're at $544,661, up 312% in the last year. 1 year ago, July 31st, 2019, the account was at 131,000. And we can see as we go each month here. September, October, November, 151, December, 186, January 31st, 253. COVID happened. We dipped down to 189. Recovery occurs, 296 by April 30th. Then we see recent run up, June 30th, 396. And today, 544,661. I am a buy and hold long-term investor, and I do experiment with options trading as well. ETF number 1 is the Vanguard S&P 500 Index ETF, ticker symbol VFV. The biggest pro of this is that the management fee is 0.08%. The biggest issue with a lot of ETFs is there's management fees, and some of them can be upwards of 1% or greater. This management fee is extremely low, meaning it's not going to eat into your gains. The second biggest pro is it's the most largely diversified out of the top 3 suggestions that I have here that I'm going to share with you. Those are the 2 biggest pros, the diversification and the lowest management fee. What's included in here are the top 500 companies. If you look at it broken down into sectors, we have 28% in technology, 14% in healthcare, 12% in financial, 12% in consumer services, and then 7% in consumer goods. And it gets lower there as we go. The geographic breakdown, essentially all of it is based around the United States, just 1% in a few other areas. Looking at the past history, we see that in the last 1 year, the return was 10.9%. The average annualized over the last 3 years was 11.9% per year. And average over the last 5 years is 12% each year over the last 5 years. The best part is when we take a look at the 5-year chart, we don't see very much volatility. We see a slow, gradual uptrend with not very many major pullbacks. The only major pullback is the COVID situation right here. And we've recovered essentially almost back to the peak. With an ETF like this, all you would essentially do is you would buy this each month. Once a month, just buy. Don't try to time it. You're just going to contribute as you go, because if you take a look at what's been happening, it's just been slowly picking up. So your best bet is to trickle in money each time you get it, whether that's each month or each week, whatever you can afford to handle. I would go ahead and just put that automatically into something like this if you're looking to diversify your investments. You could look at this as being potentially the safest of the 3 because there's not much volatility. ETF number 2 is going to be the ARK Genomic Revolution ETF, ticker symbol ARKG, comprised of mainly gene editing. The management fee is significantly greater here at 0.75% annually. So you're going to be losing out at 0.75% of whatever money is invested in this fund. But there are other pros to outweigh that. If we take a look at the holdings, we're going to see the top 10 holdings. 11% is in Invitae, then we have 9% in CRISPR, and then in Illumina, and we go down the list. What we need to understand is that it is a genomic ETF. The money you invest in this ETF is diversified within the genomic revolution industry. So it's diversified in all the companies that are in that industry. So it's not massively diversified because it's technically one sector. The reason why I believe this is a great potential investment is because we know that gene editing is the future. We know that it's coming, but do we know which company will be the leader in it and which will succeed? I personally don't. I haven't put in a ton of research into that. This could be a good investment for us because we may believe ARK after researching ARK, and we may believe the future of gene editing. Those 2 beliefs combined could give us enough conviction to go ahead and put our money with this ETF. If we take a look at the performance, the last year has been insane, 56% returns in the last year. However, average analyzed over the last 3 years has been 35%, which is still outstanding. And the average annualized over the last 5 years has been 19% per year over the last 5 years. So we've seen this pop off and explode in the more recent years. And the trend is our friend in this industry, so we could be seeing accelerated gains in the coming years as we get more and more on the cusp of a breakthrough. If we take a look at the 5-year chart, we see mainly flatlining over those 2016 and 2017 years. Then we see a steady climb from mid-2017 up until mid-2019 with not very many drops. 2020 is where we see the real explosion. Innovation picks up in times of recessions. So when COVID occurred, that's when innovation really picks up and shines. So the biggest thing you need to keep in mind is that 0.75% management fee, and it's not massively diversified because we're focusing on that genomic revolution. The third ETF that I would suggest we look into is ARK Innovation ETF. Again, 2 ARK suggestions here. Ticker symbol ARKK. Now again, this one's led by ARK Invest, and the management fee is the same at 0.75% annually. If you take a look at the top 10 holdings, we're going to see Tesla at 10%, Invitae at 9%, Square at 8%, CRISPR, Roku, 2U, Illumina. We got Zillow in there, Protolabs, and LendingTree. This is a much more diversified approach, and this is going to be the #1 pick that I would suggest looking into further. This would be my favorite if I was to invest in one of these 3 suggestions. Why is that? Because of the fact that it's more diversified, and it's not betting on just the genomic revolution, but it's not so diversified that it's more of a value play, and we're not owning the dinosaurs. We're not owning the Coca-Colas. We're not owning the top 500 biggest companies in the US. We're owning the companies that we believe have the most growth potential and the most innovation. We are investing in companies who we believe are going to be changing industries, not just the current industry leaders who have been the leaders over the last 10, 20 years. We're investing in the upcoming innovative companies that are there to disrupt the industry. And it's not just one industry. We're talking about disrupting multiple industries. We have to keep in mind that I am personally a growth investor. If you are deciding to be a growth investor and that's your cup of tea, this would also be your top pick if you were to invest in an ETF. If we look at the performance over the last year, we're going to see 49%. Last 3 years, 37% per year. The last 5 years, 29% per year over the last 5 years. These are absolutely outstanding gains. Most investors would tell you you have to be an absolute master and dedicate your life to the stock market and then combine that with some luck to get a good steady 20-25% annual return over a long run. When we take a look at the 5-year chart, we just see a steady incline, a steady increase going up all the way to 2020, and that's when we see it take off again because innovative companies take off in times of recession. And the reasoning behind innovative companies taking off in times of recession is because they're doubling down on their growth, whereas the bigger companies are struggling to stay afloat because they are so big. So when dark times come and consumers stop their spending, the big companies lose out massively. But those smaller companies that don't have as much overhead and they're really focused on pushing innovation, they're already investing all of the money in innovation. Whereas the bigger companies, what is the first thing they cut from their budget when times get tough? They cut their budget into new research and development. So they don't go ahead and put as much money into research and development, aka innovation, which further stifles their growth and then lets the smaller companies grow even quicker. My personal favorite investment ETF is the ARK Innovation ETF for the reasons listed previously. Now, after watching this video, your next question should be, do I trust and do I believe in ARK Invest? You'd research the top names behind the firm and you would go ahead and make your own decisions based on your own research after watching this video without blindly putting your money in the ones that I'm sharing here. Before we wrap up this video, we're going to go through some hypothetical scenarios so you can see how your money could grow over the years if we potentially invested in these ETFs and if we got the previous rate of gains in the future. If we went with VFV as our ETF to go for, and we started off by contributing $10,000 upfront, and then we went ahead and contributed $1,000 per month over the next 10 years, this is what it would look like. We would be getting an average annualized return of 12% because that's what we saw when we looked back on VFV. We'd be contributing $1,000 a month. When we calculate it, we started with $10,000, and in 10 years, we would have $252,988 if we sustained that 12% rate of return each year over the next 10 years while contributing $1,000 per month. You would have contributed $120,000 of your own dollars over that 10-year period, and you would have gained $122,000 in interest. So you would essentially got 100% gains, like doubled your money in 10 years if you went with the VFV and if all things were considered. Remember, hypothetical scenario. Now with ARKG, the Genomic Revolution ETF with ARK, we saw that in the last 5 years, the average annualized return was 19%. So we go with the hypothetical scenario of 19% each year over the next 10 years while contributing $1,000 per month. We would see $378,000 as our total balance, $248,000 being from interest. So this is actually 200% gains over the next 10 years. Now, if we went with ARKK, we could potentially see 29%, which gives us an ending balance of $676,000 over 10 years, $546,000 being from the interest, $120,000 being from the contributions. Now, that is more of 400% gains. So we saw 100% with VFV, 200% with ARKG, and 400% with ARKK. Again, this is all hypothetical scenarios, and there's one thing we didn't factor in, the management fees. So what we could potentially do is we could just go ahead and say 28.25% for ARKK, because remember there's a 0.75% management fee on that ETF. How much of the gains would we have lost because of that management fee? Well, instead of having $676,000, we would now have $647,000. So we're looking at $30,000 less. But does that really matter if our gains are that much more? You decide. Same goes with the other one. If we look at ARKG, instead of using 19%, we could use 18.25% and have an ending balance of $362,000. VFV management fee is negligible. It's 0.08%. We're not even going to factor that one in. Let me know which ETF fund you prefer the most here. Which one are you most likely to go ahead and invest in? Subscribe for more financial education videos just like this one and my regular portfolio updates, and I'll see you in the next video.